we're turning our attention now to the retirement of Brian Cody, and I'm delighted to say Cork Diarmuid O'Sullivan is with us to give us a perspective of what it was like to actually come up against his team. Diarmuid, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, Ger. How are you doing?
I'm very good.
You're in good form today. The Kerry victory seems to have heightened your spirits. Has it?
I certainly, I'm enjoying.
Well, it hasn't mine. I'll just put it out there. It hasn't for me, but obviously it's done something for you.
I'm obviously covering it up very well then, Diarmuid. I'm delighted for Eoin, and I'm delighted for his people, but
yeah,
I'm scared about a new dark age, to be honest. I'm legitimately scared about a new dark age where Kerry overlords, and they just take it for granted. That's my concern here.
That's fine. We'll leave him play that piece out for a while and see how it goes.
Come here. We wanted to talk about Brian Cody, right? So you were in teams that beat Brian Cody's teams, and you were in teams that were beaten by Brian Cody's teams. Was there something?
Absolutely.
Was there something consistent when you came up against what you knew you were going to face when he was in charge?
I suppose the funny thing about this, guys, right, is we're still kind of waiting for this famous Wolf of Wall Street clip to appear with Brian Cody in it, and his fist clenched and that steely determination in his face. I'm not leaving, I think it's still in the back of our mind somewhere, because that dogged determination that we've seen in Brian through years, it's just, it's still all a bit surreal. And it's probably the National League kicks off next year, we'll be still scratching, is there a Tom Brady in this guy in the back of his head somewhere, So we'd be afraid to nearly put full closure on here in Cork just to make sure he is gone. And that's with the greatest respect to the man, because you asked me at the outset there, Ger, what did he bring? Brian's teams, I mentioned in his own characteristic there, that steely determination that, they were constantly going to die with their boots on, regardless of where the result was heading. And from his first team to his last team in the All-Ireland final a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I think that resonated throughout his tenure of big manager Kilkenny.
You guys were probably the first proper rival of his era in many respects. You won the All-Ireland final in '99, and so I guess that gave you a great sense of confidence when you were going up against him that you could win those games, really, because there were definitely some counties who felt like, oh, this is Kilkenny and this is Cody and this is Shefflin. And not that they were beaten before they went out, but certainly when the game was in the melting pot, they didn't have what it took. But for your team in particular, the introduction in '99 of a bunch of under-21s who went on to be like all-time greats, it must have been a strange kind of, for you guys to watch just how powerful the Cody era became and how long it lasted. Yeah,
and not only that, it was extremely difficult to take. From a Cork perspective, to look at the way they dominated, once they defeated us in 2006, once they dominated that next period, until Tipperary came along and challenged them there for a while. But go back to '99, again, we were young, we were fearless, we didn't know what was ahead of us, an All-Ireland final, it was new, so it didn't trouble us, but so we could always go out and it was a free shot. We'd been successful under 21. Brian was only just stepping into the role there anyway, so he hadn't really created the monster just yet. So we knew there was a real good opportunity for us. I suppose what really sticks out for me that year and something that kind of sticks out since, Cork played Kilkenny in a challenge game that year down in Kilkenny of an opening of a field. I can't exactly put my finger on where we played them, guys, but we're really young, went down there, we got an incredible trimming, 15, 16, 17 points beaten out the gate by a very strong Kilkenny team, and subsequently turned them over in the All-Ireland final. And only once to date have Cork and Kilkenny played a challenge game mid-season following that.
Right.
And that was a fundraiser for Jamie Wall a number of years ago in Parky Ring. Brian Cody has refused since that date to play Cork in a challenge game at any stage throughout the season. So, we'd set our own little moral victory there that Brian would not play Cork in a challenge game throughout the season. So it was just an interesting one and an interesting take from our perspective, So we had kind of put the Indian sign over him. He wasn't going to take a chance again. we'd gone to Kilkenny with a young team. They'd beaten the life out of us. We turn up in All-Ireland final, they lashing out the heavens, and we end up turning them over by a couple of points, you know. How did you face a Brian Cody Kilkenny team? It's, with the greatest respect to all the guys we played against, it was like meeting the bully boy in school. If you lay down to the bully boy in school, he'd keep chipping away and chipping away and chipping away at you. But you know, if you're willing to stand up, put your shoulders back, and take what pain was coming your way and work your way through it, you know, you always had a chance against Kilkenny. You had to face him. You had to eyeball him. You had to look him straight in the eyes. Grant, you might be, you know, in your head, you might be stronger, you might be fitter, you might be quicker, you might be a better hurler. But us Cork guys, we give everything, and I think, you know, that's where the rivalry really started.
You don't ever get the sense that, Diarmuid, that Brian Cody ever forgot easily then, just with that anecdote you tell about the challenge matches there, that he had a great way of using a grudge or creating a grudge in his head almost for the betterment of his team.
Oh, absolutely. I think Brian, you know, not that his and his teams needed too many motivated factors, but you know, he always had something small, no doubt, in the back of his mind to you know, to instill that extra bit of determination in his team as they were getting ready for combat, you know.
That period, maybe we kind of need to go back and revisit a bit more, because the 99 All-Ireland final, if people are unfamiliar, it finishes 13-12 is the final score in the end, but your team is really young, and that's the bedrock of the team that goes on to be the Cork team for the next kind of 8, 9, 10 years even. The Kilkenny team there has Shefflin and McGarry, but all the rest of them are kind of coming towards the end of their career. So basically, they win the All Ireland the next year. We shouldn't ignore that after Offaly stopped you in the semis. But
correct,
that team changes dramatically then around 02, 03, 04, and they go toe to toe with you guys who do back to backs, and then they stop your 3 in a row. So it's a real, like, if you were to take kind of from 97, 98. And 99 when you guys come in to their end to them doing the 3 in a row, that's a period of very intense rivalry between you two. Yeah,
it was a very, very intense period, but you know, while rivalry is great, Ger, there was always the ultimate respect between both squads, you know, because they knew what we were putting into it. We were fully aware of what they were putting into it, and I don't think it ever crossed the line where it you know, where it got really nasty or cynical throughout the games. It was just both sets of teams go man for man. When hurling was slightly different back then, you know, wasn't as tactical as it is now. So it allowed guys to go toe to toe under the 1v1 battles out in the field. And I think, you know, that in itself allowed for huge contests and huge battles throughout that period of the mid 2000s there.
It was all a bit spicier too, because you guys were believing and kind of helping to drive forward the momentum of the GPA. Kilkenny were a little bit more reluctant to get involved. Cody seemed to be somewhere, but never quite publicly in the ether when it came to that. Did that add a bit of spice? Because there's definitely stories from All Stars trips where there was, I wouldn't say hatred, but certainly less collegiality than you might expect when everybody's getting pissed.
Yeah, absolutely, and I suppose that's the problem with drink. You know, they'll always bring out something. They say that, you know, the truth always comes out with a few points. Whether, you know, we can take that with a pinch of salt, but yeah, there's no doubt there was debated conversations along the way somewhere, but I think you know, everyone always shook hands at the end of it, and you know, respected each other's decisions and opinions, and kind of moved on. You know.
Was it enjoyable having them as rivals, or was it kind of sickening at the end where they come out on top?
As a Cork man, it was hard to take. Yeah, absolutely. You know, we'd stopped them to 3 in a row. We were starting to build our own thing. You know, 2006, we felt we're going up there with the right opportunity, but we had to guard against, you know, what we'd done to them previously, and unfortunately, you know, they came out. The grass was long in Croke Park. They stopped the running game. They flooded bodies back. So it was probably, you know, Kilkenny don't do tactics, but yet we work like dogs. We get a few bodies back. However, they managed to get the grass long and keep the grass long Croke Park all Ireland final day. But that's another that's for another day. But so yeah, look, it was disappointing, but it was just the experience they gained throughout the number of seasons previous watching us and engaging with us,
And you would have obviously kind of seen up close as well in his latter years as a selector, the Brian Cody at the end of his managerial career. So what's your take on the arc of Cody and the changes that he allowed himself to make over the course of his career?
Like, Brian is an extremely interesting character, and I think the hurling fraternity can be very grateful for what Brian has not only brought to Kilkenny, but brought to the game of hurling, and, over nearly a quarter of a century, to be so dominant and, so well respected throughout the game. His legacy will go on for a long, long time. But I remember back in 2001, I suppose it's something that just, again, it just resonates with me and where Brian Cody was and in his mindset in relation to winning and determination. We were down in Buenos Aires in an All-Star trip. I think it was 2001. And obviously the All-Star game was taking place. It could have been the Sunday. So back then, boys being boys, we were out on the Saturday having a few beers. Crack was mighty, as you can imagine. Way in a foreign land. Great time going on. Kind of the match was the back of our mind. So Sunday morning came one way or another anyway. Sunday afternoon came, just 25, 26 degrees down in Buenos Aires. As you can imagine, a couple of Irish lads, half sunburnt, half hungover. Ball was thrown in anyway, 1919 versus 2000 team. It was on Damien Hayes from Galway. And now, he wasn't the ideal fella, lads, I can assure you, to be marking with the sun splitting the stones and a few beers running down the forage. It wasn't really the ideal place for me to be, not to mind anyone else. So he was giving me a bit of a runaround. And I'll never forget, Brian Cody called me at half time. And I'm not sure why he said it to me, right? He said, "Can I ask you something?" He said, "Why are you leaving Hayes?" He said, "Run around the field," he said, "and dominate you like that." And I was kind of finding it hard to breathe, not to mind taking what he was saying to me. He said, he said, "Fast forward the clock," he said, "to the middle of the summer," he said. "Cork are playing Galway," he said. "Are you going to leave Damien Hayes running around the field like that?" He said, "You're actually going to do something about it." And I was thinking to myself, geez, here I am, I'm half over. We're down in Argentina playing a game. And that really resonated with me, with Brian and his mentality throughout, any time I crossed him, either on the field or on the sideline, that, this guy is a genuine hurling person. And I suppose as time went on, Brian evolved and he created team after team after team. And again, he can walk away with his head held extremely high, not needs a pat in the back from a Cork man to tell him he can walk away from his job with his held head high. Even up to last Sunday week, again, he walked away and he left an incredibly imposing opposition behind him for any manager coming through. But Brian on the line, you always knew he would give, and obviously resonated with these players, that he would give you everything. Off the field, he would give you everything, and he will fight for every last ball for his squad while the 70, 75 minutes of the game was going on.
That's mad. He couldn't help himself from helping you, even though at some stage you might be chasing one of his forwards around, maybe a Richie Hogan or somebody, going, "Oh, I shouldn't have told him about that Damien Hayes thing.
Absolutely,
I shouldn't have given him the inspiration." But he needed.
I don't think it ever troubled him after. I said, "Gosh, it didn't really matter." I don't think it really troubled him. But yeah, it was mad, absolute mad. But you know what? It just always stood in the back of my head.
That point about them not doing tactics was nonsense, right? Because we know that there was a forward line there who would change around depending on who was going well and who wasn't going well, and like all sorts of other things were happening. They just didn't call it tactics at the time, but even though it absolutely was. So what were they like to play against as a forward unit? Because Shefflin plays in that final in '99. I think it's his second or third season at that stage. And
I'd say it's only his first.
Is it? So 99 was his first.
It was only his first, Ger, yeah, only his first.
Of course, you're right. Otherwise he would have won. Otherwise he would have won the 11. It's a fair point. So you guys, you witnessed that career evolve and develop. I think you probably would have been marking him that day, would you?
I was marking him for a while, yeah. Himself and DJ, yeah. They were kind of swapping again. Even go back to that early point. There was a little bit of movement. If you were being kind of starved of ball in your own position, they kind of had that license to rotate between the marquee players. John Power was another one of them. So they had the authority to make them little switches that appeared throughout games, and definitely through the 2000s as it further developed. Shefflin, Larkin, Brennan, all these guys had the autonomy and the authority to put themselves in positions where they were going to be dangerous if they were starved of ball.
Yeah, and that I think is really interesting for a manager who obviously is supposed to be this I rule with an iron fist, completely ruthless, but actually he gives the players the freedom to make decisions, to play. Essentially, now it's heads up hurling, but then it was like, play what you see. If you need to make the changes, you make the changes. Don't be waiting for us to tell you exactly what to do.
Yeah, and what that showed, it showed Brian always had faith and trust in his players and his big players to make the right decisions, and to have that support from a manager gives a player fierce confidence.
Yeah, look, I do think that rivalry, when it comes to be excavated again, is going to go down as one of the great rivalries, because your team in 99 and the team that finishes the final in 06 isn't massively different, but there's a complete turnaround in the Kilkenny team between those two periods. So that again is the other sign of a great manager. Is like, you come in, you see, okay, I can win All Ireland with this group, but actually I need to get these other younger players through, and that's the evolution of it. And I suppose that's the bit where the comparison to Ferguson is at its most appropriate.
Oh, absolutely. To be able to identify further ahead, okay, I'm going to need a cornerback in 12 months' time, I'm going to need two forwards in 2 years' time, but it was how he strategically did it over that period of time. He'd bring a guy in for a championship game for 5 minutes, bring a guy in for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and build him up over a prolonged period of time, that when he'd earned his right then to start in his Kilkenny team, he'd his apprenticeship served, he'd his time done, and now here you go. Now is your opportunity. If you want to take it. If not, I will have some other guy to come into the breach and take it on from you.
Diarmuid, great stuff this morning. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks a million. It's Diarmuid The Rock O'Sullivan there, giving us his thoughts on the Cody era and what it was actually like to come up against various different iterations of it.